I never thought betrayal would feel like this, like a slow poison seeping through my veins, numbing me before setting me on fire. It wasn't just about the lies. It wasn't just about the deception. It was about trust. Trust that I had built from the ground up. Trust that I had given so freely to a man who never deserved it. His name was Kian Mercer, the golden boy of the corporate world, the man I had handpicked, trained, and molded into what he had become. And me? I was Zariah Levitt, CEO of Levitt Enterprises, a woman who had clawed her way to the top in a world dominated by men. A woman who never let her guard down. Until I did. I should have seen the signs, the lingering stares when he thought I wasn't looking. The way his voice changed when he spoke to me. Too smooth, too calculated. But I was too blind, too distracted by my own belief that he was different, that he respected me, that he was loyal. Loyalty. What a joke. It all started with a whisper. "Zariah, there's something you should know," Camille, my assistant, had said, hesitating in my doorway. I had barely looked up from my laptop, drowning in a sea of emails and deadlines. "What is it?" I asked, distracted. "It's about Kian." His name alone made me pause. Kian, the man I had trusted for 5 years. My right-hand man, my confidant, No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't give him that power. I closed my laptop, finally giving Camille my full attention. "What about him?" She hesitated, looking at me like she wasn't sure if she should say it. That hesitation sent a shiver down my spine. "He's been meeting with the board, privately, without you." A hollow feeling settled in my stomach. Why? They're considering a shift in leadership. They're talking about replacing you. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that echoed through the office. Replacing me? Impossible. I was Levitt Enterprises. I built this empire with my own 2 hands. But Camille didn't laugh. She just stood there, gripping the edge of her tablet like she was bracing for impact. "And Kian? What's his role in all this?" My voice came out colder than I intended. Camille swallowed. "He's leading it." The words hit me harder than they should have. My breath caught for just a second too long. I forced my expression into stone, nodding as if the news didn't shake me to my core. "Who else knows?" "Only a few people, but it's spreading. The final decision hasn't been made yet, but they're serious." I nodded again, slower this time. My fingers curled into my palm, nails digging into my skin. Kian Mercer, the man I had pulled from the shadows, given a seat at the table, and trusted with my secrets. And now he was leading the charge to destroy me. I didn't react. Not yet. There was too much to process, too much to confirm. Instead, I stood, smoothing out the non-existent wrinkles in my silk blouse. "Thank you, Camille. That will be all." She hesitated again, like she wanted to say more, but one look at my face must have told her it was pointless. She gave a small nod before stepping out, closing the door behind her. The moment I was alone, I let out a slow breath, my pulse hammering in my ears. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes, and if Kian thought he could take me down without a fight, he had no idea who he was betraying. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my office, lights dimmed, staring at the skyline of a city I had conquered. My mind replayed every conversation, every moment Kian and I had shared over the years. How many of them had been real? How long had he been planning this? Had he ever been loyal? Or was I just another stepping stone on his way up? I gripped my glass of whiskey, the ice clinking as I swirled the liquid. Number wasn't going to sit here and feel sorry for myself. That wasn't who I was. I pulled up my private server, accessing the company's encrypted files. If Keon was making moves, there would be a trail. Somewhere. Emails, messages, financial transfers. And then I saw it. A hidden transaction, large, discreet, funneled through a shell corporation I didn't recognize. It was dated 3 weeks ago, around the same time the board started their so-called private discussions. My pulse quickened. Who was he paying? Or worse, who was paying him? I needed more. I needed solid proof before I made my move. That's when I made the call. The line rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Boss? You do realize it's 2 a.m., right? I need you at the office, now. A pause, then a sigh. This is about Keon, isn't it? Just get here, Adrian. Adrian Wells had been my head of security for 6 years. He was sharp, ruthless, and more importantly, he owed me his life. If there was dirt to be found on Keon, Adrian would dig it up. 30 minutes later, he was in my office, dressed in a wrinkled hoodie, running a hand through his messy blonde hair. You look ready to kill someone? Just one person, I muttered, sliding my laptop toward him. Find out where this money went. Adrian leaned in, scanning the numbers. His eyebrows lifted. This is bad. Worse than you think. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing firewalls like they were child's play. 5 minutes later, he exhaled sharply. Damn, this account? It's linked to one of our biggest competitors, Reynard Holdings. I went still. Reynard Holdings had been trying to undermine Levitt Enterprises for years. You're telling me Keon has been working with them? Adrian turned the laptop toward me. Not just working with them, he's been feeding them intel, corporate espionage. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Of course he has. Betrayal was one thing, but selling my company's secrets to our enemy? That was war. Adrian watched me carefully. What do you want to do? I closed my laptop and stood. I want proof, concrete proof, something that will bury him so deep he'll never crawl his way out. Adrian smirked. That I can do. I grabbed my coat, my mind already spinning with a plan. Find out everything. I don't care what it takes. And Adrian, yeah, make sure he never sees it coming. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had changed. My heels clicked against the marble floors, my expression unreadable, my posture unshaken. If Keon had the audacity to move against me, I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of knowing I was onto him. Not yet. I stepped into the elevator, my reflection staring back at me in the mirrored walls. I looked the same, sharp, composed, every strand of hair in place. But inside I was already planning his downfall. The door slid open to the executive floor, and there he was, Keon Mercer, standing by the conference room, speaking to one of the board members, his lips curved in that easy, charming smile, the same smile that had once convinced me he was on my side. I felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak, just a cold, calculated focus. His eyes flickered toward me, and for a split second, something unreadable crossed his face. Guilt, hesitation, fear, or was I imagining it? Morning, Zariah, he greeted smoothly, as if he hadn't spent weeks conspiring against me. I returned his smile with one of my own. Morning, Keon? Busy day ahead? His gaze sharpened, as if trying to gauge something beneath my words. Always. You know how it is? Oh, I did. More than he thought. I brushed past him and walked into my office, closing the door behind me. My hands curled into fists at my sides, but I forced myself to exhale slowly. Patience, precision, The right moment. That's what I needed. A few minutes later, Adrian's message popped up on my private line. Meet me in the security room. You're gonna want to see this. I was there in under 5 minutes. Adrian sat in front of a row of screens, each displaying different security feeds from the building. He gestured toward one of the monitors. This was last night. Watch. I leaned in, my stomach twisting as the footage played. Kian, dressed in all black, moving through the building like he belonged there, which he did. He had access, my access, but it was where he was going that mattered. He stopped outside the restricted archives room, a place only a handful of people had clearance for, a place where our most confidential files were stored. Then, with practiced ease, he pulled out a key card. My key card. Rage simmered beneath my skin as the footage continued. He slipped inside, disappearing for almost 20 minutes before emerging again, a flash drive barely visible in his hand. He didn't even hesitate, just walked out as if he hadn't just stolen from me. I gritted my teeth. Where did he take it? Adrian clicked another screen. That's the fun part. He didn't take it home. He met someone in a car outside. The footage switched to the street outside the building. A sleek black car pulled up, the windows tinted. Kian walked straight to the passenger side, handing over the drive. The window rolled down just enough to reveal the person inside. My breath caught. Henry Vaughn, Chief Executive Officer of Reynard Holdings, my biggest rival, my enemy, the man who had spent years trying to dismantle my company piece by piece. And Kian had handed him everything on a silver platter. I let out a slow, controlled breath. No emotion, no reaction, not yet. Adrian watched me carefully. You good? I turned to him, my expression unreadable. Oh, I'm perfect, he smirked. So, what's the plan, boss? I stared at the screen, at Kian's face frozen in betrayal. We don't expose him yet, not until I have everything. And then? Adrian raised an eyebrow. A slow smile spread across my lips. Then I burn him to the ground. The hardest part of revenge wasn't planning it. It was patience. I wanted to storm into Kian's office that second, slap the smug expression off his face, and watch his world crumble. But that wouldn't be enough. Not for what he did. The hardest part of revenge wasn't planning it. It was patience. I wanted to storm into Kian's office that second, slap the smug expression off his face, and watch his world crumble. But that wouldn't be enough. Not for what he did. I needed to destroy him the way he had tried to destroy me, slowly, methodically, leaving him with no escape. So, I waited. For 3 days, I acted like nothing had changed. I went to meetings, smiled in the hallways, and even shared small talk with Kian. If he suspected anything, he didn't show it. Maybe he thought he had won. Maybe he thought I was too blind to see what was happening. Fool. Adrian worked in the background, tracing every step of Kian's betrayal. We found emails, bank transfers, encrypted messages, all leading back to Reynard Holdings. He wasn't just feeding them information. He was negotiating his future. I sat in my office, scanning through an email Adrian had recovered. Kian had written it 2 weeks ago, outlining his proposal to the board. The same board I had built with my own blood and sweat. Zariah's leadership is outdated. She's too emotionally attached to Levitt Enterprises, and that attachment is hurting the company. With me at the helm, I can take us to new heights. New heights? My fingers tightened around my pen. He wanted to take my company from me and sell its future to Vaughn. He was playing a dangerous game, and he thought he was winning. He had no idea he was already losing. That night, I made my move. Kian was scheduled for a private dinner with Vaughn at an exclusive club downtown. He had no idea I knew. He also had no idea that Adrian had hacked his phone. The messages came in like clockwork. Vaughn, you have everything? Kian, final pieces are in place. Tomorrow the board will vote. After that, she's out. I stared at the words, my pulse steady. Tomorrow. They were planning to vote me out tomorrow. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk curling my lips. Good. That meant tonight was his last night thinking he had won. I arrived at the club before Kian and Vaughn. Not inside. I had no interest in playing games face to face. Not yet. Instead, I sat in a sleek black car across the street, watching through a tinted window. Adrian sat beside me, tapping on his tablet. Cameras are set. We'll have full audio and video. And the leak? I asked. Adrian grinned. Oh, it's already being uploaded. By morning, the entire board, hell, the entire corporate world, will see what Kian's been up to. The moment Kian and Vaughn stepped inside, I exhaled slowly. Showtime. The tiny microphones Adrian had placed at their reserved table worked perfectly. Their voices came through crystal clear in my earpiece. Vaughn chuckled. She still doesn't know? Kian's voice was smug. No clue. She's completely blind to it. By tomorrow, she'll be out, and will finally have full control. I tilted my head, my smirk widening. Oh, Kian, you really think I don't know? And she won't see this coming? Vaughn asked, amusement in his tone. Kian laughed. Soraya! She's powerful, sure, but at the end of the day, she's just a woman. She let emotions cloud her judgment. That's why she's losing. I went still. Adrian swore under his breath. Oh, he's dead. I said nothing, just inhaled, exhaled, slow, controlled, because Kian's words had just sealed his fate. Upload the final file, Adrian. His fingers moved fast over the screen. Done. In the next 30 minutes, every board member, every investor, and every media outlet will get the proof. Good. Now I just had to sit back and watch him fall. I arrived at the office early the next morning, dressed in black, my heels clicking against the marble floors with sharp precision. The office was buzzing, whispers, frantic movements, eyes flickering toward me with barely concealed shock. Perfect. They had seen it. By the time I reached the executive floor, Kian was already there, pacing outside the conference room, phone pressed to his ear, panic written all over his face. His eyes snapped to mine the moment I approached. For the first time in weeks, I saw it. Fear. I smiled. Good morning, Kian. Rough night? His jaw clenched, and for a moment he didn't speak. Then, voice tight, he muttered, You set me up. I tilted my head, pretending to be surprised. Set you up? Kian, I have no idea what you're talking about. Lies. He knew, he just wasn't ready to admit it yet. The doors to the conference room opened, and the board members stared at us, their expressions ranging from disbelief to fury. The chairman cleared his throat. Ms. Levitt, Mr. Mercer, please come inside. We have a lot to discuss. I stepped past Kian, pausing just long enough to murmur, Looks like I'm not the one being voted out today. Then I walked inside, taking my rightful seat at the head of the table. And Kian? He followed, but this time, for the first time, he wasn't the one in control. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Every face around the table was either pale with shock or twisted with barely concealed anger. Papers were shuffled, glasses of water untouched. No one wanted to be the first to speak. I sat at the head of the table, my hands folded neatly in front of me, my face calm, composed, unshaken. Meanwhile, Kian stood near the other end of the table, his usual smugness gone. His hands were balled into fists at his sides, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. Good. The chairman, Edward Vaughn, cleared his throat. His gaze flickered between Cayenne and me, uncertain. Ms. Levitt, Mr. Mercer, it seems we have a situation. A situation. What an understatement. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head. You're referring to the leaked documents? Edward sighed. You know exactly what I'm referring to. His tone was edged with frustration. I let a delicate smile grace my lips. Then let's not waste time pretending we don't know what's going on. The entire board has seen the evidence. Kean Mercer, your so-called future of Levitt Enterprises, has been feeding classified company data to Renard Holdings. He has been negotiating behind my back, plotting to remove me from my own company. And last night, he had a celebratory dinner with Henry Vaughn, where he explicitly confirmed his betrayal. I turned to Kayan, who hadn't spoken a word. His knuckles were white from gripping the back of his chair. Do you deny it? I asked, my voice quiet, deadly. He exhaled sharply through his nose. This isn't what it looks like. Lies. He knew it. I knew it. The board knew it. One of the senior members, Mr. Aldrich, adjusted his glasses, his voice cold. We heard the recordings. We saw the bank transactions. There's nothing left to explain, Keon. Keon's jaw ticked, his gaze darting to the others, searching for support. But there was none. He turned back to me, his voice lowering. You set me up. I tilted my head. And you underestimated me. That was your first mistake. Silence stretched. Edward sighed again, rubbing his temples. This is a disaster. We can't afford a scandal like this. A scandal. That's what they were worried about. Not betrayal, not corporate espionage, just the public fallout. I pressed my fingers together. It's already been handled. The press hasn't received the full report. Yet. But if we delay, if we try to sweep this under the rug, that might change. Edward looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly. And what exactly do you propose, Ms. Levitt? I didn't even hesitate. Fire him. The room stilled. Kean's eyes darkened. You can't be serious. I turned my gaze on him, my expression unreadable. You tried to destroy my company. You plotted to take my position, steal my legacy, and sell it to my greatest rival. My voice dropped lower, every syllable cutting like a blade. If you were in my position, Keon, would you give me mercy? His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He had nothing. I looked back at the board, keeping my voice smooth. Effective immediately, Kean Mercer is terminated. His shares are revoked, his contracts voided. He will be escorted out of this building, and a legal investigation will follow. Edward hesitated. Zariah, this decision is final. I met his gaze, steel in my tone. Unless, of course, you'd prefer this company to sink with him. A long pause. Then Aldrich nodded. I second the motion. Mr. Mercer's employment is terminated, effective immediately. A chorus of murmured agreements followed, and just like that, it was done. Kion was finished. Security was waiting outside the boardroom. 2 men in dark suits, their presence alone a clear statement. Kean stared at them, his breath uneven, his body tensed. Then he turned to me, his voice quiet but shaking. You set all of this up. You were always 10 steps ahead, weren't you? I rose from my chair, stepping toward him, stopping just inches away. I lowered my voice so only he could hear. You betrayed the wrong woman. His throat bobbed, something flashing in his eyes. Regret, maybe. But it was too late. Too damn late. The security guards stepped forward, one of them grabbing Kean's arm. He didn't fight, didn't argue. He just let them lead him away, his back straight, but his entire future gone. I watched as he disappeared down the hallway, and for the first time in weeks, I finally exhaled. But I wasn't done. Not yet, because there was still Henry Vaughn, and he was next. Kian was gone, but I wasn't finished, because Henry Vaughn, the man who orchestrated this betrayal from the shadows, was still standing, and I wasn't the type to leave loose ends. By the time I returned to my office, my team was already moving. Camille, my assistant, was glued to her phone, sending out carefully worded statements to the media. Adrian stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold below as security led Kian out of the building. "The vultures are circling," Adrian muttered. "Reporters are already outside. Everyone wants to know what happens next." I smoothed my jacket, my expression unreadable. "Let them watch. The best part is still coming." Adrian smirked. "And what's the plan for Vaughn?" I turned my gaze toward my desk where my laptop screen displayed the contract Kian had been negotiating with Reynard Holdings. Vaughn had been planning to acquire Levitt Enterprises piece by piece, slowly, subtly, until he controlled it completely. Too bad for him. That plan just died. "We hit him where it hurts," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "His money, his deals, his reputation." I picked up my phone and dialed the one person I knew Vaughn wouldn't expect. The call was answered on the second ring. A smooth, familiar voice came through. "Zariah, this is a surprise." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. "Mason, I think it's time we had a conversation about Henry Vaughn." There was a pause, then a slow chuckle. "I was wondering when you'd call." Mason Blackwell wasn't a friend. He wasn't an ally, but he was exactly what I needed. He was the CEO of Blackwell Capital, a powerful investment firm that held stakes in multiple companies, including Reynard Holdings. He and Vaughn had been in a silent power struggle for years, both men waiting for the right moment to destroy the other. And I had just handed Mason the perfect opportunity. We met that evening at the Haven, a private rooftop bar where deals were made behind closed doors. Mason was already waiting when I arrived, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, a glass of bourbon in his hand. His dark eyes flickered with amusement as he stood, gesturing for me to sit. "To what do I owe the pleasure, Zariah?" I didn't bother with small talk. "Vaughn made a move against me. It failed. Now, I'm going to make sure he never recovers." Mason smirked, sipping his drink. "I like the sound of that." I leaned forward slightly. "You have a stake in Reynard Holdings. You know better than anyone that Vaughn's leadership has been reckless. He's taken too many risks, made too many enemies. It's time for a change." Mason studied me, amusement fading into something sharper. "And you want my help to take him down?" "I don't need your help." I met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm taking him down regardless. The only question is, do you want a seat at the table when it happens?" Silence. Then, slowly, Mason's lips curved into a grin. "Now that's interesting." By the next morning, the storm had begun. A confidential report exposing Vaughn's history of backdoor deals and fraudulent transactions was anonymously leaked to the corporate watchdogs. The board of Reynard Holdings was already in chaos, scrambling to do damage control. But that wasn't all. Mason pulled his investment firm's support from Reynard Holdings, causing a sharp drop in their stock value. Investors panicked. Shareholders demanded answers. And Vaughn? He was drowning. It was only a matter of time before he lost everything. I stood in my office, watching the news coverage on the large screen mounted on my wall. A photo of Henry Vaughn flashed across the screen, the headline bold and damning: "Corporate Scandal. Reynard Holdings under fire for internal corruption." I took a sip of my coffee, feeling nothing but satisfaction. The phone on my desk rang. I let it ring twice before answering. A familiar, panicked voice came through. "Zariah, we need to talk." I smiled. "Hello, Vaughn. Having a rough morning?" Silence, then a sharp inhale. "You did this." "I did," I admitted easily. "And you should have seen it coming. You made a mistake when you came after me, a big one." "I can fix this." His voice was tight, desperate. "Let's make a deal. We don't have to be enemies, Zariah. We can find a way to work together." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Oh, Vaughn, we were never meant to work together. You tried to take my company, my legacy. You used Kian like a pawn, thinking I wouldn't notice. But here's the thing, I always notice." "Zariah," I cut him off. "You've already lost. Accept it." Then, without another word, I hung up. I turned to Adrian, who had been standing near the doorway, arms crossed. "He's finished," I said simply. Adrian smirked. "And Kian?" I thought about Kian Mercer, the man who once stood by my side, the man who had betrayed me so effortlessly. Where was he now? Probably scrambling to fix the mess he had made. Probably realizing he had gambled everything. And lost. "Kian's done, just like Vaughn." Adrian chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." I gave him a slow, knowing smile. Smart choice. As I turned back to my window, looking out at the city below, I felt something settle deep within me. Not relief, not peace, victory. I had taken back everything that was mine, and I had done it on my terms. And the best part? They never saw it coming. By the time a week had passed, Kian Mercer and Henry Vaughn were nothing more than whispered scandals. The board at Reynard Holdings had pushed Vaughn out, scrambling to repair the damage. Meanwhile, Kian, he had disappeared from the industry altogether. His name was tarnished, his credibility gone. No one was willing to take the risk of hiring a man who had betrayed the very person who built him. And me? I was still standing, stronger, untouchable. But there was one last thing I needed to do. I knew where Kian was before he did. Adrian had kept tabs on him, not out of necessity, but out of sheer curiosity. After everything he had done, after all his talk about power and control, where had he ended up? A small cafe on the outskirts of town, drowning in cheap coffee and regret. I arrived unannounced, stepping inside as the bell above the door chimed softly. The place was dimly lit, filled with students and freelancers lost in their laptops. And then, at the corner booth, I saw him, Kian Mercer. His once pristine suits had been replaced by a wrinkled shirt and an unshaven face. He looked up from his coffee, and the moment his gaze met mine, his entire body stiffened. For a second, just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Shame? Anger? Defeat? I took my time walking over, sliding into the seat across from him. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at me like a ghost from his past had come to haunt him. "Kian," I greeted smoothly. "You look well." A humorless chuckle escaped his lips. "I'd say the same, but we both know that'd be a lie." I tilted my head, studying him. "Tell me, was it worth it?" His jaw clenched. "You already know the answer to that." I let the silence stretch between us before speaking again, my voice even. "You had everything, a future, power, my trust, and you threw it all away. For what? A temporary seat at Vaughn's table?" His fingers curled around his coffee cup, his knuckles white. "I made a mistake," I smirked. "You made a choice, and you lost." He exhaled, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't expect forgiveness, Zariah. I don't even expect you to care. But for what it's worth, I regret it." I watched him carefully, measuring the weight of his words. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. Regret won't fix what you did? My tone was sharp, final. You thought you could replace me. You thought you were smarter, more powerful, but Kian, you forgot one simple thing. He swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. What? I leaned forward, my lips curving slightly. You were never on my level. His breath hitched just for a second, but I caught it. Without another word, I stood up, adjusting my coat. I had nothing left to say to him. As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. Zaraya. I paused, glancing over my shoulder. You're the only person I ever admired, and the only one I ever feared. A slow smile spread across my lips. Good. And with that, I walked away, leaving him behind in the ruins of his own making. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my skin, refreshing, freeing. I had won. Not just against Kian, not just against Vaughn. I had won against the doubt, against the betrayal, against every force that had tried to take me down. Levitt Enterprises was mine, always had been, always would be. And, as I looked up at the towering skyline, one thought settled deep inside me. No one would ever betray me again, because this time I would see it coming.